to elders past and present of the Ngunnawal people and acknowledge any First Nations people here today, including our incredible First Nations spokesperson, Senator Dorinda Cox. For years now, people have been told that if you do the right thing, get an education, work hard and follow the rules, you'll be able to afford a home and build a good life for you and your family. But for many, it's not like that anymore. You study and you end up saddled with debt. You try to find a place to rent, but the rent keeps going up. You get a job and try to save for a home of your own, but it's getting harder and harder to reach. And while everything keeps getting more and more expensive, the climate crisis keeps getting worse. You do everything that was asked of you, everything that previous generations and politicians have done to set themselves up, and you still can't get ahead. Or you raised a family, worked your whole life, and because you're retiring without enough, you're at risk of becoming homeless if something goes wrong. If you're in this situation, you're not alone. You're not alone. And you need to know that it wasn't always this way in this country. You deserve better. You deserve a government that does more than just tinker around the edges while the problem gets worse. You deserve better than being made to pay more tax than the 1 in 3 big corporations in this country that pays $0 tax. And even if you're not at breaking point yourself, you know that this is a very dangerous place for our society to be because it risks breaking the promise of handing to future generations a life better than what came before. And if governments don't look after everyone, then the likes of Trump get a foothold. At this election, you have a better choice. You don't have to choose between the timid and the terrible in this battle of the Band-Aids. You can vote for a future for all of us. Over the last 12 months, the Greens have released a comprehensive social democratic platform centred around the idea that in a wealthy country like ours, everyone should be able to afford the basics. We can protect our environment and do what the science demands to stop the climate crisis from getting worse. Our cost of living plan is a future for all of us. It seeks to give people a better deal by restoring people's economic rights to a secure job with fair pay that covers food, a home, and allows you to spend time doing what you care about. To be free from being ripped off and exploited by big corporations and billionaires, whether it's at the supermarket, by the banks or big tech. To have the right to decent housing, because housing is a human right. The right to universally accessible medical care, including mental health and dental care. World-class free education, from early learning to public schools to TAFE and university, like the Prime Minister had. Income support above the poverty line, safety and equality for women at home and at work, and a government that tackles sexism. Electricity that's publicly owned, renewable and provided at close to cost price. We need public services that, wait for it, just work. Whether it's housing, health, education, public transport, these can be world-class, provided free or heavily subsidised, like 50-cent fares for buses, trains, ferries and trams. All of the above is common sense. It's all possible if we just make the big corporations and billionaires pay their fair share of tax. And it's more important than ever that government puts up a big umbrella to protect us from Trump's fallout. This election, the Greens have announced 3 priorities so far for minority government negotiations, things that we could get done by the end of this year. Dental into Medicare. Protecting our environment by ending native forest logging. Free, universal, high-quality childcare. And today we add a 4th, our plan to fight for renters and first home buyers. This election, the Greens are the party of renters and first home buyers. We'll also have more to say about climate and other matters, so stay tuned. But to foreshadow our climate announcement, this election we have a once-in-a-generation chance to stop new coal and gas mines. You can't put the fire out while you're pouring petrol on it. Labor has approved over 30 new projects, coal and gas projects, since coming to power, and Dutton would drag us into the dark ages. We've seen that Labor can't be trusted to protect the climate or the environment. The Prime Minister scrapped his own environment laws because the coal and gas corporations told him to. And during budget week, Labor and the Liberals gutted Australia's laws for the rotten multinational salmon corporations. According to the Australian Conservation Foundation, as this term of Parliament ends, we now have weaker environment laws than when it began. That is a disgrace. The Greens can deliver. Last time there was a minority parliament, we secured world-leading climate laws and we got dental into Medicare for kids. Now it's time to finish the job and get dental into Medicare for everyone. Now, under Labor and the Liberals, you pay more tax than many big corporations. In 2021, ExxonMobil paid no income tax on $15.5 billion in revenue. In the same year, Woodside brought in $6.7 billion in revenue and paid no tax. Right now, 1 in 3 big corporations pay no tax. Under the Greens plan, that changes. Unlike Labor and Liberal, the Greens think it's wrong that a nurse pays more tax than a multinational corporation. Labor and the Liberals are funded by the big corporations that are causing the crises. The big banks, the big supermarkets, coal and gas corporations. It is why Labor and Liberal won't act. The major parties are delivering for big corporations, not for everyday people. The Greens don't take donations from big corporations. We can't be bought and we won't sell out. Corporate profits at the moment are at record highs. The wealth of billionaires is growing at record rates. And in Australia, they made $67,000 an hour in the last year. Economist Ross Garnaut says our economy is dominated by corporate rent seekers, where a few big corporations in mining, gas, supermarkets, banks, retail and gambling are making excessive profits. These profits are too high and they don't pay enough tax. And did you know that most gas corporations don't even have to pay for the gas that they take out of the ground? They get it for free. They get it for free. And then they get to ship it overseas, together with the profits, tax-free as well. Under Labor, beer drinkers will pay $4.8 billion more on beer tax, excise, than the gas corporations do on gas tax over the next 4 years. These corporations are actually profiting from the crises that we all face, with the active support of both major parties. Whether it's the coal and gas corporations fuelling their profit from the climate crisis, banks making billions from the housing crisis, or supermarkets gorging themselves off people's need to eat. And we can all feel it. We feel it at the checkout, we feel it when we pay the insurance on our home or get the latest energy bill. The billionaire class's extreme wealth distorts and damages the economy, it pollutes the environment and destabilises politics here and around the world. And we can see it playing out in America right now, with the billionaires standing over the president as he creates laws which benefit them and are a danger to us all. We must stop Peter Dutton bringing Trumpian politics to Australia, just as we must stop Anthony Albanese bringing Trump himself here. In the time that it takes me to give this speech, Trump fan, Liberal Party donor and climate change denier Gina Rinehart will have made more money than many working people in the country make in an entire year. Under our billionaires tax plan, the wealthiest 150 billionaires would pay an annual 10% tax on their entire wealth. We would introduce a 10% limit on capital flight within a year to stop them moving their capital offshore. And just on this measure alone, we could raise $50 billion over the next decade. We also need to tax the excessive profits of the big corporations. The 500 biggest corporations in Australia made almost $100 billion in super profits during COVID. And as the economists point out, excessive profiteering is still happening today. The Greens will introduce a 40% excess profit tax on corporations with more than $100 million in turnover in Australia. And as we deal with the fallout from Trump and global challenges, I want to point out that this would apply to less than 0.1% of the corporations who operate here. Not small businesses, not medium businesses, and not even all the profits of big business. Just the super profits, the excessive profits. Excessive profits that history shows that they continue to make even when times are tough for the rest of us. We will urgently tax the super profits of coal and gas corporations. It's common sense. Windfall taxes or super profit taxes are mainstream stuff. Countries like the UK have imposed super profits taxes on oil and gas, and 22 countries in the EU have imposed super profit taxes on energy corporations. Countries like Italy, Spain and the Czech Republic have applied them on banks. If they can do it, we can do it too. The Parliamentary Budget Office has said that all up, our big corporations tax will raise $514 billion over the next decade. The Greens will tax the billionaires and big corporations so that you can get your teeth fixed. Now, I want to talk about housing for a moment. Nothing is more urgent than housing, and we are at breaking point. On housing, the Greens are refusing to join in this battle of the Band-Aids between Labor and the Liberals. Their approach is breaking the social contract and it's tearing the country apart. Our proposal is a serious attempt to restore and protect everyone's economic rights, giving younger generations and renters a chance at home ownership while protecting mum and dad investors. Former Treasury Secretary Ken Henry warned us that willful acts of bastardry from successive governments, including failing to fix capital gains tax to make housing more affordable, are robbing young people of their future. If we don't stop the bastards, house prices will get further and further out of reach. Rents will continue to keep rising, and there will be fewer and fewer genuinely affordable places to live. And in those tales of political bastardry that Ken Henry is talking about, perhaps the biggest bastard of them all was John Howard, former Liberal Prime Minister, who single-handedly put house prices out of reach of first home buyers with the capital gains tax discount in 1999. Before he did this, in the 1980s, the average house cost about 3 times the average income. Now it has more than doubled to 8 times the average income. Why did Howard's handout to wealthy property investors in 1999, fully backed now by both Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton, smash first home buyers and stressed mortgage holders a quarter of a century later? Because when combined with negative gearing, the cost of housing increased rapidly. A wealthy property investor with a portfolio of other people's homes can turn up at an auction and push the price up so that it's out of reach of a renter looking to buy their first home. The investor can write rental losses off on tax while they own it, and then when they sell it, they get a tax break worth potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars from the government. How is that fair? How is that fair? Imagine being a renter armed with your life savings, rocking up to an auction knowing that the wealthy property investor next to you gets a big fat cheque from Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton, schemes that these politicians themselves have benefited from, that lets them bid up the price out of reach of first home buyers. How is that fair? Now, over the next 10 years, there's $176 billion in tax handouts going to wealthy property investors. Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton give more help to someone who owns 5 homes to go and buy their 6th than they do for someone trying to buy their first. That is wrong. That is just wrong. If you earn your money through wages, you have to pay the normal tax rate, but people who have 15 houses get a 50% discount on their tax when they sell those properties. It's a government-sanctioned rort for the wealthy, with 80% of the gains from capital gains tax handouts going to the top 10% of income earners. This is wrong. It's a Liberal scam backed by Labor, and it is tearing our country apart. Negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount cost us more than $10 billion a year. This is more than the $8.4 billion that state and territory governments spend on public and community housing combined. This is wrong. I can announce today that the Greens will make reforming negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount a priority in the next Parliament, including when there's a minority government. This reform has always been urgent, but the threat of a Trump-fuelled attack on Australian renters and first home buyers in the next few months now makes this a matter of housing life and death. Welcome interest rate cuts are on the cards, thankfully, but they will also be a magnet for property speculators unless we change these warped incentives now. Renters and first home buyers may get smashed even further in the next few months as wealthy investors spooked by Trump leave stocks and shares and pile into property, pushing house prices into the stratosphere. Investors with big money behind them could jump into the housing market because of these incentives and lower interest rates, while first home buyers with their life savings would be priced out of the already overheated market. If you think it's a horror show on real estate websites now, it could be about to get much worse unless we reform negative gearing and capital gains tax discounts now. We need to act urgently, within weeks after the election, to protect renters and first home buyers from Trump's fallout. Otherwise, the door may be slammed shut forever. The Greens' plan would see negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount scrapped for wealthy property investors, but preserved for what are often called mum and dad investors, with one investment property. John Howard left us a time bomb. It needs to be diffused. But we have to do it in a way which recognises that there are huge numbers of people who are using this scheme to look after their retirement, people who've made plans for their future based on the levers available to them. These people aren't billionaires or wealthy property investors. It's not their fault that the system is so broken. Mum and dad investors aren't out to screw the system, but just to look after their future. And they make up more than 2/3 of the people who use negative gearing. We will protect these existing mum and dad investors by grandfathering negative gearing and capital gains tax for people with one investment property. That remains for them forever. But in the future, the capital gains tax discount will be replaced with the indexation method that used to be in place under Keating. It won't be available for residential investment properties, and future purchases or more than one existing investment property won't be eligible for negative gearing. If you want to buy more than 2 investment properties, that's your prerogative. But you shouldn't expect a giant government cheque to help you buy your 3rd, 4th or 15th house while millions have none. Like, it's just basic fairness. And this will make a difference. This will make a difference. The data that we're releasing today shows that just these changes to negative gearing and capital gains tax concessions could lead to more than 850,000 people living in their own home. The Liberals blame migrants for a problem that they didn't cause, while Labor tinkers around the edges. The Greens will make the changes needed to fix the housing crisis. To drive down rents and make sure everyone can buy a first home, we also need government to build lots of homes that people can actually afford to rent and buy. It's worked before and it will work again. If the government built homes and rented or sold them at an affordable price, we could drive down rents and provide more people with a place to live. Making sure that everyone has an affordable home is the government's business. That's why we've launched a policy for a public property developer. It could build 610,000 new homes to rent or buy over the next decade. On average, around Australia, renters would save up to $16,600 a year, while first home buyers could save up to $249,000 compared to the private market. We know this plan is possible because it's what the government did after World War II. In 1945, the government directly built 26% of all homes nationally. The Prime Minister grew up in public housing because government used to build them. Now Labor's knocking them down and the Liberals don't care at all. Our public property developer is weighted towards rentals. If we flood the market with low-cost, good-quality rentals, it will drive down rents in the private sector too. Surely even Labor and the Liberals can agree with this basic rule of supply and demand. We also need to regulate rents like we regulate other essential services. Since the start of the pandemic, rents have increased by 49%, much more than wages and incomes. Unlimited rent increases should be illegal. Landlords cannot be allowed to raise the rent by whatever number they want. There has to be limits. Rents don't fall when mortgage rates fall. Labor claims they can't do it, but they got the states and territories together to cap and regulate power prices, and they can do it with rents as well. And today I'm releasing new data which shows that if a rent freeze was released when we first announced it, the average household would have saved $6,318. In total, renters across the country would have saved $13.8 billion. So as the party of renters and first home buyers, the Greens have got a three-point plan to fix the housing crisis. Get government to build homes that will save you $250,000 when you buy them and $320 a week when you rent them. Cap rent increases and make unlimited rent increases illegal. And level the playing field for first home buyers by winding back the billions in unfair tax handouts to wealthy property investors. We can build homes that people can afford. We can stop giving tax handouts to people who have 5 investment properties. These are tried and true methods done in this country before, and with a bit of vision, we can do them again. And excitingly, we are on the verge of making it happen because there are big seismic shifts at work this election. There are 7 million renters in this country. A third of the country rents, and renters and first home buyers now have a political voice in the Greens. This election, for the first time, those getting locked out, Gen Zs and millennials, will be the biggest voting bloc. With a minority government coming, the third of the country who rents and who are locked out of owning a home will finally get a seat at the table, even if they can't currently afford a roof over their head. This election, the Greens are fighting for renters and first home buyers. If you're worried about the cost of living and housing, you are not alone, and we will fight for you. But real lasting reform needs everyone's support. If you're a Gen Z or millennial, you get it. The housing system is cooked and it's not in your favour. If you're saving and saving, we will fight for you. But if you're older, ask your kids who they're voting for. Vote for your kids and future generations so that they can enjoy the security of home ownership that you might have had. I have parents tell me that even though they may have personally benefited from some of these schemes, they can see now that the effect is unfair. And they support reform so that their kids will have a chance. This is the kind of country that the Greens believe in. And this election, there's a pathway to make it happen. You've basically got 3 choices. First choice is Dutton. Peter Dutton, like Donald Trump, built a career on punching down on those from different backgrounds. Like Trump, he's made fun of those impacted by the climate crisis while doing the bidding of the gas industry. Like Trump, he wants to reduce the public service, cut the ABC, cut NDIS, cut health, all while making ludicrous claims about the quality of teachers. If you want genuinely affordable housing, dental into Medicare, and to make big corporations and billionaires pay their fair share, we have to keep Dutton out. The second choice is Labor. A vote for Labor is a vote to tinker around the edges. The reality is, despite their application of Band-Aids, rents will be higher, housing will be more unaffordable, costs will rise, and there will be more coal and gas. Over 30 more coal and gas projects approved in this parliament alone. Fundamentally, Labor lacks the guts to tackle the source of all these problems. We can't keep voting for the same 2 parties and expecting a different result. There's a third option. Vote Greens. We will keep Dutton out and get Labor to act on the cost of living, housing and climate crises. With more Greens, we can put more pressure on Labor. Greens' pressure has already paid off. Greens' pressure secured an extra $3.5 billion for public and community housing, 6 times what the government was intending to spend. It's led to 50-cent public transport in Queensland, pushed Labor to wipe 20% off student debt, adopt our policies of making price gouging illegal at the supermarket, making it free to see the GP, and the PM even materialised in a Greens Health seat to announce he'd adopt our policy for help for household batteries. You can see that they're moving, and that's good, but it's not enough. More Greens means more pressure. Last time we were in minority government, we got dental into Medicare for kids and some of the world's strongest climate laws. And now experts and commentators are pointing towards minority parliament again. And of course, the Greens will remain in balance of power in the Senate. This is an exciting time, a once-in-a-generation chance to make government work for people, to restore and establish economic rights like housing, expand Medicare and make big corporations and billionaires pay their fair share. We can change the game from a battle of the Band-Aids to one of genuine vision, cooperation and change, where renters and first home buyers are no longer ignored, where special treatment to coal and gas corporations is ended, where we fully wipe student debt, where public transport costs 50 cents and Medicare includes dental and mental health. So if you're worried about the cost of living and disappointed that Labor hasn't acted and you don't want Dutton, you're not alone. If you're worried about the housing crisis and you're sick of the tinkering around the edges and you want genuinely affordable options, you're not alone. If you're worried about the climate and the environment and you can see things getting worse, you're not alone. You're one of the millions of people across this country who knows that we can't keep voting for the same two parties and expecting a different result. The Greens are within reach of winning seats right across the country, and in a minority government we can make things happen. We're within reach in Wills, Macnamara, Richmond, Sturt and Perth. We can combine our position in the lower house with the strongest team of senators that our party has ever had, where we currently hold the balance of power and continue to have a strong say. Together we are powerful. Together we can win these seats across the country, and together we can apply the pressure we need for change. With more Greens, as part of a strong crossbench, we can tackle the challenges that we face and create a future for everyone. We've shown we can deliver. We've done it before. And this election, we have a once-in-a-generation chance to create a country where everyone has the right to the basics: food, health and a home, a safe climate and a healthy environment, an economy which puts people before the profits of the obscenely wealthy and the excessively profitable. So this election, you have an opportunity for real change. If you're worried about the cost of living, climate and housing crisis, we can't keep voting for the same two parties and expecting a different result. If you want change, the first step is to vote for it. Vote One Greens.
Thank you very much for your speech. Obviously some very strong policy ideas around housing. You've got a number of your colleagues in the room today, but your spokesman on housing is not here. A year ago he was possibly one of the most high-profile politicians, non-mainstream politicians, or even more generally, in the media that had a very loud voice and was being listened to. Where is Max Chandler Mather today, and has he been gagged?
Max Chandler Mather has helped us craft this policy and is the reason that we are having a national discussion about how to make sure that renters and first home buyers have a chance. Like, finally, thanks to the advocacy of Max Chandler Mather, backed by all of us, the third of the country who rents has now got a voice at the table. Now, we are campaigning right across the country and we take nothing for granted in any of our seats, especially people who've been elected for the first time, and people are out busy campaigning, just as we saw Max Chandler Mather, Elizabeth Watson-Brown and Stephen Bates during the course of the recent floods and threats in Brisbane, working side by side with their community to make sure they are prepared. I think people in Griffith know that Max is in their corner, and they know that the Greens are there to campaign and fight for them, and he has helped ensure that we are having a debate about housing and intergenerational fairness in this country in a way that no one else has. I thank him for helping us develop this policy that will protect mum and dad investors, but also ensure that renters and first home buyers have a chance. The Greens are the party of renters and first home buyers, thanks in large part to the terrific work he's done as our housing spokesperson.
Our first question goes to Ron Misem from the Financial Review.
G'day, Mr Bandt. Thanks for your speech. At your campaign launch in 2022, you announced 7 policy priorities for when exercising the balance of power in the Senate during the current term: no new coal and gas, free childcare, dental and Medicare, etc. You weren't able to achieve the vast majority of those during this term of Parliament with balance of power in the Senate. What will you do differently in the next term of Parliament, either with that balance of power in the Senate or even with balance of power in the House of Representatives as well, to achieve the things that you say are going to be your priorities in the next term?
Well, look, we've achieved a lot, and it's clear from this parliament already that Greens pressure works. Like $3.5 billion extra for public and community housing, money being spent now that was never on the table before. Ensuring that water flows to the Murray, like that's something that has been achieved. Getting the right to disconnect for workers so that people can clock off when they log off. Like there's all of that we've been able to achieve in this parliament in a majority government. Right? And we now see, as we head towards the election, Labor deciding to adopt our policies to make supermarket price gouging illegal after they voted against it in Parliament, but now are supporting it. We saw them adopt our plan to triple bulk billing incentive for GPs so that we can get a step closer to being able to see the GP for free. This is happening because there are Greens in Parliament. When we were in minority parliament last time, we got dental into Medicare for kids. Like, we have a track record of delivering. More Greens in parliament gives us greater chance of getting these outcomes. Now, one of the things I've noticed about this place over the years is that they all say no, 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 no until they say yes. Like, the Greens were the only ones pushing for marriage equality for years. All the other parties said no, 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 and then they said yes. We're the only ones pushing for a national anti-corruption commission. They said no, 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 until they said yes. Like, what it shows is that with more Greens in Parliament, we're getting to put these ideas on the table. And I think the next Parliament, the reason I think it's such an exciting opportunity and the ability to actually get a lot of these things done is that there are big shifts happening. Like, the Prime Minister couldn't convince a third of the country to vote for him last time. Like, there's less than a third of the country voting for the government, a bit more than a third voting for the opposition, and about a third voting for someone else. Like, people are realising that we can't keep voting for the same two parties and expecting a different result, and they want more voices at the table. And I think as that flows through to the election, and there are more voices at the table, as there have been in the Senate now for a period of time, there's going to be an obligation on those old parties to listen to new ideas. Like, that is what people are crying out for. And I think it would be incredibly popular to put dental into Medicare. Like, the things that we are putting on the table would be things that I think would stand the next government as a beacon of progressive reform that would go down in history. Like, that is the exciting opportunity that is there for us. So I think, short answer is that I think times are changing. People want more voices at the table, and they want governments to listen to the ideas that are being put there, work together, because good ideas should be implemented. And it's about time that things like dental into Medicare became a reality.
Can I just quickly add that one of the key things that you would have in the House of Representatives over the Senate in terms of balance of power is that the confidence lever, being able to have a sway in a vote of confidence in a balance of power. Is that something that you would consider using to achieve your objectives and aims?
I would expect that the government will respect the parliament that the Australian people choose. I'd be astounded if they didn't. And what we know is that there are going to be more voices in the next parliament and greater diversity, and that is a good thing. That puts an obligation on us, I think, to work together, right? To work together and to ensure that we get outcomes for people. One of the things I learnt from last time in 2010 is that there's the ability to get things done at the start, and then there's the ability to get things done during the course of the parliament. And at the start, we got dental into Medicare for kids. Right, we got dental into Medicare for kids and world-leading climate legislation. And then we got more reforms as the parliament went on. So yes, in that situation where Labor or Liberal doesn't have a majority, we keep Peter Dutton out and we would get Labor to act, using that position that you described, but also during the course of the parliament, continuing to put good ideas on the table and getting them passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tessa Conomu from the AAP.
Thank you very much for your time today, Mr. Bandt. Sorry. In March, your party unveiled a costed policy for new military programs. Do you intend to make your backing for a potential minority government contingent on cutting military spending and dumping AUKUS?
So we've outlined what our priorities are and the priorities that we put on the table in that balance of power situation, ending native forest logging, getting dental into Medicare, making childcare free and housing reform. And we'll announce more as we go on. We think we can win the argument about AUKUS on its merits. Now is precisely the wrong time for Australia to be joined at the hip to Donald Trump. Like, not only are these AUKUS submarines never going to arrive, because they're not building them fast enough and the US government has said they don't consider giving them to Australia as a priority, but they're about joining Australia at the hip to a dangerous demagogue in the United States, and they're not about defending our country, they're about joining Donald Trump in his next attack that he wants to make on someone else. Like, our position should be about defending Australia, not joining in Donald Trump's next war of aggression. So we think we've got the Australian people behind us on this. We think we've got the Australian people behind us on this, and that this is an argument that we can win. And can I say with Trump, like, Labor and Liberal have tied us so closely to Donald Trump's America over so many years now, that it is time to start having a more independent relationship and reassessing our relationship with Donald Trump. Like, at the moment, I get that, like, a lot of people are really worried about what is coming out of the White House. There is a great deal of fear and apprehension. To paraphrase Beck Shaw, we're watching the world being burned down by powerful men. We just didn't know they would be such losers, right? But seriously, like, people are holding their loved ones close. Like, people are flicking through news articles in their feeds because it is too distressing. People are thinking about their future, and my message would be, you're not alone. Like, there are millions of us across this country right now who do not want Australia to go down the US route. Right, who want to detach ourselves from Donald Trump and to look after us in this country. And, like, Trump and the billionaires and those who back him, they will try to pick us off one by one, but they can't beat us all together. And there are millions of us. There are millions of us in this country at the moment who do not believe in what Donald Trump is doing and do not believe in what Peter Dutton is doing. And this election is an incredible chance to say, like, we say no to that big loser energy that's coming out of the White House, and we want us to be a country where everyone is able to afford the basics and where we are not joined at the hip to Donald Trump the next time he decides to go and press the nuclear codes and go to war.
David Crowe, Sydney Morning Herald and Age.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Mr. Bandt, for your speech. And I want to follow up on Tessa's question there, because it's the biggest issue around at the moment, what Donald Trump is doing, the tariff war and the implications more broadly from that. What should Australia do? What should the Parliament do in response to what's happening in the White House? You've talked about AUKUS. Should we break the ANZUS alliance with the United States? You talked about conflict. if there is a conflict over Taiwan, should Australia resolutely stay out of that conflict rather than taking sides? And when you look at the geopolitics right now with what's happening in America, where do you think Australia should go in terms of its relations in the region? Should we turn more towards China as a economic partner at this time of global volatility?
Australia should be a force for peace. Australia should be a force for peace, and we should do everything we can to be contributing to de-escalating tensions in the world at the moment. If there was a conflict, including an armed conflict between the US and China, it would be devastating for the world, as well as being devastating for Australia. We're in a position where we've got relationships with both countries. And we are in a position to now start joining with those other countries that Donald Trump is attacking and saying we need a new way of doing things that puts peace first, And at the moment, Labor and Liberal have completely 100% put us in Donald Trump's pocket and given us next to no room for manoeuvre at all. Economically, I mean, you mentioned a number of things there. Economically, there are other countries now that are bearing the brunt of Trump's tariffs. We should be exploring and deepening relationships with them. He's doing this to a large part of the world, including people with whom we've got a lot in common. In Europe, for example, there's some significant opportunities there for us. Likewise, on the security front, we have to get out of AUKUS and on ANZUS that you mentioned. That is something we need to renegotiate. It is something we need to renegotiate because Australia has, I think, the not very proud history of following the United States into every war it has chosen to go into. And I don't think we should be signing up in advance to go off and join whatever war Donald Trump wants to fight next. Right? He's already made a number of claims about how he will use troops and so on. We should be putting our country first. And instead what we've got is Peter Dutton, who wants to bring Trump-style politics to Australia, and Anthony Albanese in the middle of all of this going out and inviting Trump to come to Australia, as if sucking up to these bullies is going to change the way they do things. No, we have to put our country's interests first, be a force for peace and de-escalation, and start exploring and extending economic relationships with those other countries who are also in the firing line of Trump, because that is, I think, how we'll set ourselves up for the future. And it also begins to pave the way to isolate him. And that's what you should do with bullies like that. Work with others and isolate him.
Thank you, Julie. Just quickly on China. The Greens have had issues with human rights in China in the past. Do you think those now should be secondary issues when we've got more in common with China against Donald Trump?
We've continued, and in fact we're the first people, I think, in this parliament, including during the mining boom when no one else wanted to raise these issues, we were the ones raising human rights issues, and we've continued to do so. And we've continued to do so and continue to say that they're important. Of course they're important. And so I don't agree with the suggestion about downgrading that you've said. They're important and we should continue to raise them. But again, I make the point, we're in actually quite a good position of having strong relationships with both of them, and we should be using that to de-escalate. It's not about sweeping anything under the carpet. It's about saying, in this situation where Trump is a danger to everyone, government needs to, one of the other questions you asked is what should government do? I think government needs to put up that umbrella across the country to ensure that we are protected from the Trump fallout. And I mentioned with housing that there's a real risk that we could see a spike in house prices unless the government gets in and acts quickly. So protect our people. Now is precisely the right time to be investing in things that make our society more equal and that hold us together, because a more equal society is a more cohesive society, is a more secure society. That is how we avoid going down that US road.
Thank you.
Next questions. Sarah Ison from The Australian.
Thank you for your speech, Mr Bandt, and the reappearance of the big toothbrush. Sure, that was fun to fly over. I just would ask if you and your colleagues humour me for a moment. I just wanted to read out some comments about the Greens and yourself. I do ask you humour me for just one moment. Adam Bandt just wants to make himself relevant. Adam Bandt has changed the way the Greens political party operate. They don't talk about the environment, they talk about some extreme agenda. They seek to divide. They are not serious players. Their economic policies are just crazy. Greens are throwing their lot in with thuggery. Misinformation is being constantly and deliberately spread by some Green senators. The Greens are a full-blown protest group, and then there are comments about accusing the party of anti-Semitism. These are not comments from the Liberals. These are not comments from some lobby groups or certain think tanks. These are comments from Anthony Albanese, Richard Marles, Jim Chalmers and other members of the Labor Party. So I wanted to ask you, Mr Bandt, are you seriously going to continue to help the Labor Party with your preferences, and potentially more importantly, are you confident that you could work cooperatively and functionally with Labor in a minority government arrangement?
Look, our plan, our position is very, very clear. We'll keep Dutton out and get Labor to act. And despite the bluff and bluster, like during the course of this parliament, we have successfully negotiated and passed a huge amount of legislation, and people in public and community housing are $3.5 billion better off thanks to the Greens. Workers around the country, thanks to our negotiations and pressure with Labor, now have the right to disconnect outside of work hours. And there's laws that help protect our environment and help protect our water, despite the best efforts of Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton to work together to tear them down. So, I expect they're going to say all sorts of things during the course of the election campaign. Like, none of that surprises me. But at the end of the day, the government can't convince a third of the country to vote for it, right? And the opposition gets a third of the vote, a bit more, and about a third of the country is voting for someone else. And I think this will be the election that the penny drops for the major parties, that they can get together and change the electoral rules to try and prop up the system in their favour, but it's not going to work. Like, it is not going to work. We have people around the country at the moment, we have renters in houses where the doors don't lock and the window's broken and there's mould on the walls, and Labor and Liberal are saying, oh, the landlord should be able to put up the rent as much as they like. There's 7 million people renting in this country, and that's what Labor and the Liberals are saying. Labor and Liberals today are now saying to people that they think it is right to give more money to someone who's got 5 homes to go and buy their 6th than to someone who hasn't got their first. Right, it's just not washing anymore. Like, the penny is dropping. People are twigging that we can't keep voting for the same 2 parties and expecting a different result. Peter Dutton would be a threat to many of the things that we hold dear. He would attack climate action, he would attack the environment. He doesn't even pretend to care. He's just announced that he wants to open up more gas mines in the middle of the climate crisis. They're in a bidding war, Labor and Liberal, as to who can open up the most gas mines. Like, Peter Dutton, we've seen him tear down things that the Greens have helped build up. That's why we want to keep him out. I would be astounded, as your question about the prospect of being able to work together, I would be astounded if the Prime Minister or anyone else refused to respect the parliament that the Australian people choose. If he can convince 51% of the population to vote for him, then okay. But that's not it's not what's happened. That's not what he did last time. And with more people saying they want more voices at the table as part of a strong crossbench, he's going to have to learn to play well with others.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ben Westcott from Bloomberg.
Hello, Ben Westcott from Bloomberg. Thank you for your speech, Mr. Bandt. And I listened to your speech, and I've read it now through. And so forgive me if I've missed it, but it appears to me there's not a single mention in this speech of the crisis in Gaza. And given how much of the past 18 months has been dominated by that conversation, particularly from your party, that is surprising to me. Is that an example of you softening your position on Gaza? And is it recognition of how much it potentially damaged you in the Australian electorate?
I don't agree with that assessment. When the attacks on October 7 took place, and the hostages were taken and the killings happened, we condemned it. We condemned it at the time. What we also said was that as an invasion loomed on 2.2 million people walled into an area half the size of Canberra, 40% of whom are under the age of 15 and they've got nowhere to go, it was going to be a slaughter. And we said that could not be backed. And so we opposed in Parliament the Labor and the Liberal backing of that invasion when they brought their motion to Parliament. And it gives me absolutely no pleasure at all to see that in the year plus since then, tragically, so many of the things that we warned about have come to pass. Like, you now have tens of thousands of children who have been killed by an army and who have been separated from their parents. The healthcare system has been destroyed. People's homes have been reduced to rubble. Amnesty International says there's a genocide occurring, okay? We've said that, but if you don't necessarily believe us, listen to Amnesty International. There are now international courts that have issued arrest warrants for the extremist Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Like, we have just said from day one that the people of Palestine and the people of Israel are both entitled to live in a just and lasting peace and have their rights to self-determination recognised under international law. And we've said that, that has to be premised on an ending of the occupation of Palestine, because that is the only way that there can be that just and lasting peace. Our position is grounded in humanity, it's grounded in international law, and what we've seen over the course of this year plus is slowly, organisation after organisation coming and recognising the tragedy of what is happening. I suspect that at this election there are going to be many people who will be voting on the basis of the Australian government's backing of this invasion. There will be many people who are going to change their vote on that, because there are things that the Australian government could do that would actually make a difference. We did it when Russia invaded the Ukraine. We not only issued words of condemnation, but we took active steps to say this is wrong. Because the thing about a breach of international law is there's not some overriding police force that comes in and holds an extremist leader to account. It's up to other governments to do it. It's up to other governments to do it. And so many people have watched on with horror and saying that the Australian government has just done nothing. Every time a red line was crossed, they've done nothing. They've continued the two-way military trade. They refused to even put the most basic of sanctions on someone who was subject to an arrest warrant from the International Court. So we're going to keep saying very, very strongly, as we see now the ceasefire failing to hold and we see paramedics killed, we see more invasions, we see more deaths, we're going to keep saying the killing's got to stop. The killing has to stop.
Thanks very much.
Alison Chow from the ABC.
Thank you for your time today, Mr. Bandt. The Coalition last night released the long-awaited modelling for their policy. How do you feel about the export gas tax? And energy experts have said it works similarly to a windfall tax that you have talked about. So does it mean you might be able to work with Peter Dutton in a minority government?
Well, look, I think Peter Dutton's made a stunning admission that there's not a gas shortage in Australia. This is what people have been saying for a very long time. There is not a gas shortage in Australia. What's happening is that these big corporations are sending it off overseas, together with the profits tax-free, and making billions of dollars along the way. And why I think this is a significant moment is that there is, I think now, a growing understanding that Australia is awash with gas, and there is no shortage. And but when it comes to the solution, you see that for Peter Dutton, it's a cover for opening new gas mines, right? It's just a cover for opening up new gas mines, and he's been explicit about this. There's a much simpler thing that we could do. Corporations like Santos, at the moment, pull more gas out of the domestic market, or pull gas out of the domestic market so that they can send it overseas and then claim that there's a shortfall. If we stop the big corporations from plundering the gas from Australian industry and households and said you can't do that just to send it off overseas to make profits off of it, we would have more than enough gas in Australia to help us through the transition as the gas use declines and we get to renewables backed by storage. And you wouldn't need to open up any new coal and gas mines. So a stunning admission of reality from Peter Dutton, which I don't always expect from him to acknowledge facts, but there you go. But again, as usual, his prescription is just to do what the gas industry wants and fast-track new coal and gas mines. And on that, no, I can't see us working together on that.
Thank you. Our next question is from Dan Jervis-Barty from The Guardian.
Dan Jervis-Barty from The Guardian. Thank you for your speech, Mr. Bandt. Anthony Albanese has said repeatedly and unequivocally that he won't be doing any deals with the Greens. Do you believe him?
I would be astounded, as I said this before, I would be absolutely astounded if anyone in Parliament, including Anthony Albanese, refused to respect the will of the Australian people and respect the Parliament that they elected. Right? And during the course of this Parliament, we have seen Greens pressure work, and there have been negotiations, and they have borne results. And they have borne results that have delivered for people and have delivered for our environment. Now, in the coming minority parliament that the experts are predicting, people are going to have to talk to each other. Like, I think it would be astounding if after the election, with a diversity of voices in Parliament, the Prime Minister or anyone else then said, oh no, I'm not going to respect the result. I'm not going to respect the result, and I'm not going to talk to anyone. Like, of course there will have to be people working together. It's what people expect.
So do you think he's being disingenuous when he makes those statements?
Look, I expect you'll hear all sorts of stuff during the campaign from everyone. But I think what it comes down to is this. The next Parliament is going to be judged on whether it makes life better for people in this country and protects our environment and the climate. That's how it's going to be judged. Now, in 2010, we got some really good reforms for people. Dental into Medicare for kids, world-leading climate legislation, $13 billion for clean and renewable energy. We have a massive opportunity here. We have a massive opportunity here in the next Parliament to act. Now, if Anthony Albanese could come and work with the Greens and get dental into Medicare, end native forest logging, ensure childcare is free and fix the housing crisis, or he could go and do a deal with Bob Katter to open up a new coal mine, right? Like, if that's what he wants to go, I don't think a lot of Labor voters would support that. I think there is an expectation that in the next Parliament, it's a minority Parliament, that we work together. We're putting on the table what we would like to see. And again, I would just be absolutely astounded if Anthony Albanese or anyone else says, no, I don't want to get dental into Medicare, I'm not going to talk to anyone, and I'm going to take my bat and ball and go home. Like, I understand people will campaign and say things during the course of the election campaign, but at the end of the day, if that's what the Australian people decide, then we've got an obligation to work together.
Are you okay to take another couple of questions because we're running over time, or do you have an appointment and need to be somewhere?
Maybe one or two more.
One or two more. Okay. Our next question is Corrie McLeod from Innovation Oz.
Thank you very much for your address. A couple of weeks ago, I hailed a driverless taxi in the United States, and to say that the world is changing around us incredibly quickly, with technology being at the heart of it. You made some remarks earlier in your answers about sovereignty and things like AUKUS. It's been almost completely missing from both the election discussions and as well, I would say, the federal budget. Is there a role for the Greens here to be starting to talk about where technology fits into our national agenda and our sovereignty over it?
Yeah, if you've got time afterwards, I'd encourage you to go and have a chat with Senator David Shoebridge, who's been leading the push to ensure protection around digital rights, also that we start to look at what it would mean to properly regulate artificial intelligence, for example, and what that means for introduction into our society. It's in our platform, in the Greens opening charter, to the words acknowledging that we're facing massive crises, but we've got the technological solutions available to fix them. Like, we know that. We've got solar, we've got wind, we have all of the solutions available to us, and in fact many of them are growing, as you say, at a rate of knots. The question is whether we harness those forces for good or not. And at the moment, as you say, one of the things that's a concern for us is that the hands-off approach can lead to technology being concentrated in the hands of people like Elon Musk. And I would much rather that all of the amazing scientific and technological advances that we're witnessing be used to ensure that we stop the climate crisis, that everyone gets a roof over their head and everyone gets the healthcare that they need. Like, that's what we should be using it for, and that people might get a bit more time off work to spend with their family without having to lose any money in the process. Like, let's have a think about how we use it for that, rather than letting Elon Musk and the billionaires make a bit more money including off platforms that we know where they allow huge amounts of toxic behaviour to flourish.
Thank you.
Our penultimate question is Rania Yallop from Nicola Smith from The Nightly. I apologise.
No problem. Hi, Nikki Smith from The Nightly. Thanks very much for your address. Back on the question of minority government, why do you think that you have such a strong hand to play, given that the balance of power, floating voters are likely to shift more towards independents and not the Greens? And what are the circumstances under which the Greens would not guarantee confidence in supply to Labour in a minority government situation? What are your red lines?
Look, the most recent election in Western Australia, we just saw huge swings to the Greens. We've gone from 1 to 4 seats over in West Australia, which is a terrific result. And Perth is one of the seats that we're campaigning in. And I think that makes Perth a seat to watch, with those huge swings that are happening towards the Greens. In the 2010 Parliament, there were independents involved there as well. Like, we understand the need to cooperate and to come up with an arrangement that forms stable, effective and progressive government. That's our preference. That's our preference, is to ensure that in the coming minority parliament, that it runs for the full 3 years and that we get stuff done. We get stuff done that makes people's lives better, and that we get some action on the climate and the environment. And we will go into any discussions with goodwill and with open mind. Because I think that's what people would expect. So I think we're seeing, like, the more that we going to tell people that our platform is to make the big corporations and billionaires pay their fair share of tax so that you can get dental into Medicare and have free childcare, the more people like it.
So what are the red lines?
Well, we'll go into it. The red line is we won't support Peter Dutton, and we will go into any discussions with an open mind, but with a clear platform that we're going to put on the table. And that's what we're doing in advance of the election, is that we're letting people know that in this coming minority parliament, we're saying, if you vote for the Greens, here's what you're going to get. Like, you're going to get a party that is in your corner and that is trying to make the billionaires and big corporations pay their fair share of tax to fund things like getting dental into Medicare and free childcare, and to ensure that everyone's got a roof over their head. Are we going to be able to get it all in one set of negotiations at the start of the parliament? I don't know. But we've got to try. Like, nothing changes if nothing changes. And these ideas that we're putting on the table and these reforms that are going to make people's lives better, like, are not things that are being advanced by the two major parties. And if we want some of these changes, and you want to tackle the housing and rental crisis, then you've got to have Greens there, because otherwise it's going to be more of the same. Otherwise it's just going to be more of the same.
Okay, our final question, Rania Yallop, SBS. Thank you.
Thank you. You've pushed for negative gearing to be scrapped entirely for a long time. Now you've got a more kind of, I guess, moderate proposal compared to that. Are you trying to move away from the image of being the party of activism? And are you concerned that some of your voter base is going to see you as too moderate now?
Thanks for asking about the housing policy. I think that might be the first. Thank you. Like, this housing is now such a crucial issue, and what we are trying to do is chart a pathway to real change that we think could be achieved, that is something that's been advocated by a number of experts, that we know that even the Labor Party was considering changes to negative gearing under pressure from us during the course of the last year, right, during the housing debate. Like, even the Labor Party was looking at some of this. So what we're trying to do is put on the table something that we think that could be implemented by the end of the year. And we think it's more urgent now with the potential for interest rates cuts, fallout from Trump. I think, like, people want us to go to Parliament to put these ideas on the table, push get as far as we can and get some real outcomes for people. And that's been the history of what we've been doing. I notice that's the first time someone has made that characterisation. So, but I think because we're putting forward, but what we're putting forward, I think, is actually a common sense idea. Because when you ask people the basic question is this: do you think it is right that Labor and Liberal give more money to someone who's got 5 homes to go and buy their 6 than to someone who hasn't got there first? Most people would say that is wrong. Most people would say that is wrong. What we're saying is, how do we chart a way out of it? And I think people will respond well to this. And what we're trying to do is, I guess, build an understanding. Not only are there renters and first home buyers over here who are locked out, we understand that there are people who are currently in the system for whom this might mean a lot. What's the pathway that protects everyone, that gets us there? And we think it's a good policy. And I hope that the others will consider it seriously.
Adam Bandt, we have a gold membership to the Press Club. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you.